Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow seekers. Here we are at the Lunar New Year with this Aquarius New Moon happening on February 1st. Now, this new moon has themes of reinvention, reflecting on the mythology that we use toward ourselves, the way that we talk about ourselves, talk about our values and our worth in the world, the way that we think and intellectualize the path that we are on. This is a new moon that is positioned in this beautiful space just after Venus retrograde, very close to the end of Mercury retrograde, and just after the North Node has moved into Taurus, which heralds this Lunar New Year as a time of reinvention and trying things a little bit differently. And new moons in Aquarius tend to be very much about asking us to step outside of the same rigid routines, to have fun, to play with maybe unconventional ways of problem solving and thinking about our life and our experience. And I find that this new moon is a really great time to really seriously sit down and look at how you are speaking about your experiences, life, speaking to yourself, speaking about yourself, the way that you write and talk and say your narrative. Because if there's one thing that Aquarius is really good at, it's at kind of taking the zoom out, looking at the big perspective, using our intellect to kind of be able to see from that eagle eye perspective. Now, this can be a double-edged sword. Either we're letting that become its own kind of being inside of us that's telling us that we have failed or that our energy is low or that we'll never be the same again, or we are using it to help ourselves along, to give ourselves credit where we need credit, to remind ourselves of how far we have come, and to create a mythology that's much more supportive, playful, curious, a little bit letting the weirdo inside of ourselves exist and be expressed and have joy and play in that and not feel embarrassed about it. So this new moon is extremely powerful in that way. So like I mentioned, this is Lunar New Year. So happy Lunar New Year to all of you out there. February 1st marks the beginning of the Lunar New Year. And like I said, this new moon is happening just a few days after Venus goes direct in Capricorn, a few days before Mercury stations direct in Capricorn, and just a few weeks after the North Node moved into Taurus. So this new moon is really about reinvention and renewal. Now, when I say reinvention, it's not that you as you are sitting here hanging out with me is not beautiful and lovely. It doesn't need to be fixed. We don't need to be fixed. We don't need to try and strip ourselves away from ourselves and do a New Year makeover, right? When I talk about reinvention and revitalization, I think what I mean is this is an intimate conversation with ourselves and the way that we talk to ourselves and tell our story. And that's an important part of this Lunar New Year and this new moon in Aquarius. First off, Sun and Moon are at 12 degrees of Aquarius, creating the gorgeous new moon that we won't be seeing, but we will be feeling. The Sun and Moon is also going to be quite close to Saturn at 15 degrees. So this is basically a new moon conjunct Saturn. And I know a lot of us have maybe a tense relationship with Saturn. Maybe it's ask some hard things of you, or you don't really know how to connect with Saturn energy. What I like to say about Saturn, especially here with a new moon during a Lunar New Year, is this is a really honest, grounded energy. This is an energy that wants us to not run away from ourselves, not run away from what really wants to be heard and seen. It's kind of an energy that says, you know, that you want to sit down and do that internal check-in, but maybe you haven't done it, or maybe you've been avoiding it, or maybe it's been a little intimidating or scary. And Saturn conjunct the new moon is just inviting us to really self-parent in that really loving way where we witness where we are now and we take care of ourselves. Now, this new moon also sparks off a conversation that was very big in 2021 because Saturn and Uranus squared a lot in 2021. And that square has been easing off. Saturn's moved quite far ahead, but this new moon conjuncts Saturn and then trines Uranus and Taurus, squares Uranus and Taurus, I'm sorry, which creates this tension, right? These squares and these conjunctions create a little bit of tension. Now, here's the thing with this though. Uranus is always going to be sparking us to try things a little bit outside the box and to be exploring how we're doing this life and to play with how we're doing this life. So when this square conversation is happening, Saturn and Uranus are squaring off, the moon's right here in the middle of this. This is about challenging us to, yes, sit with ourselves and then think outside of the confines of how we've been defining ourselves in the last year, in this last lunar year. And that's really what I want to get to. Here is the keynote for the Aquarius New Moon, now that I've gotten that whole context laid out for you. This is a visionary new moon. Aquarian energy and Uranian energy are very strong during this new moon, and this is all about thinking future. Thinking visionary. This is not about kind of making peace with the past or continuing to go over and over and over something that's already happened or that's already familiar. And this is where I think it's both exciting and it challenges us. It asks us to take a step into something maybe less familiar, into something that feels maybe a little less comforting, and into something that asks us to take our space in the world and to show up here fully, which is weirdly sometimes the scariest thing that we can be asked to do. And because this is the Lunar New Year and this is a new moon, fresh beginning of 2022 when it comes to the lunar cycles, this is the question. How have you been talking to yourself? How have you been telling the story of yourself in the last year, in the last couple of years, or perhaps longer if you've been feeling like you've been in a longer energetic cycle? What are the stories you are telling? How are you talking about yourself? Have you been telling stories about maybe how you're no longer as vital as you used to be and it feels like you'll never be vital again or alive again, or a little bit of a daredevil or adventure seeker? Maybe you think of yourself now as a cautious, shy, shaken person. And it's not that these things are wrong or that we just need to kind of hyper manically talk about ourselves in these really, really, jazz up affirmations, because if we don't sit with the parts of ourselves that need love and attention and care, then when we just say nice things about ourselves, it's kind of surface level. We never really get that full integration. So it's important that we listen to the parts of ourselves that maybe do feel cautious, scared, sad, worn out, tired, traumatized from the last couple of years or from the last year. Any parts of ourselves that maybe have felt outgrown or worried. We want to listen to those parts of ourselves. Of course, we're not trying to just step over them and throw them to the side of the road. But what an Aquarian energy is great for is being able to witness and observe that part of ourselves and to see it, and then also to think about how we may want to start writing and composing a little bit of a different story for ourselves. If there's something that we feel we want to resurrect in ourselves, a joyfulness, a playfulness, a silliness, sharing our true selves, and we feel like that's been really hard to do in recent years, or that's something that we're not allowed to do, this is a great time to question that, and then also maybe start to play with how you may want to show up, how you may want to start telling your story, how you want to categorize and speak about the mythology of your life, because this is something we kind of need to check in with regularly. Notice how we are writing our mythology. Notice how we are talking to ourselves, because over the course of the year, if we haven't checked in with it too much, it's funny how it can kind of slowly morph. Our mind is always kind of talking and moving and doing things in a typical day, and that monologue that we a lot of times don't even notice is happening is concocting and creating. So we want to check in with it. And that's what this new moon is really, really about. It's being okay with being able to sit with ourselves and notice how we have been talking about ourselves and to ourselves and how we have been mythologizing ourselves, and just seeing it there, and then being bold enough to go beyond the confines of that box, of that line, of that container that has felt so important or so concrete or so real, and being maybe a little bit curious about what the future could hold. And not in a nervous way, but in a visionary way, where we may want to start just playing with what we want to call on for beauty in our lives. And it's funny how often we will cut ourselves off when we think we are asking for something too beautiful, too good, too warm, too nourishing, too hopeful, too loving. And we'll say, oh, well, asking for that is just too much. This is a great new moon to look at and witness and notice where you are holding yourself back or feeling like you're not allowed to think visionary. And then to think it anyway, and to have a lot of fun with this. And it's that old adage that's been said so many times. The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And this new moon is very much reflective of that. We want to be friends with our mind. We want to use it and work with it and play with its plasticity and its ability to help us and be with us. And this is a really, really great moon to do just that. And to let a little bit of your weirdo out too. Like, let that interesting, strange, creative person that you are out, even just with yourself. Just let it out. Let's see what card wants to come out. So this new moon does challenge us to step up to the plate and to be really honest with ourselves and to really show up to ourselves, which sometimes can be a little intimidating at first, but once we actually sit down and are with ourselves, we realize this is what we've been craving all along and that it feels really, really good. And I think one thing that I really love about Aquarian energy is when the playful side is activated. So while it is a new moon that is conjunct Saturn and squaring Uranus, and that could come off as kind of serious or homeworky, I think for me, what it is more is questioning why in sitting with ourselves it has to feel like homework, why it has to feel rigid, why it has to be associated with certain things, and starting to play with maybe how we want to play with that, how we want to think about the way that we sit with ourselves, and is there a way to do it differently? Three of Cups came out, and I love that. I want to pull one other card to go with that. Three of Cups to me is all about the muses. It's very much an Eight of Pentacles. It's very much a card of inspiration. And of course, this can be a card of celebration, communion. The number 3 is very much about creativity and the creativity of communing with others and connecting with others. And I love this message for this Aquarius new moon so much because Aquarian energy is also tied to our community, our collective, the people we connect with, not just us as our own being, kind of in our own space, but also how we share and connect with others. And that's a theme that I didn't even have in my notes. So I love that this card showed up because I think this is also a new moon to think about how you want to connect and commune and share and give and receive in the coming year, and not just in like romantic relationships or in dating. This for me is about the beauty of communing with like our communities and our friendships and our friend circles and the people we want to connect with, and sharing our gifts and our weirdnesses and our thoughts and our ideas with those people. I think this new moon could be a great new moon too, to reflect with trusted people that you love and to play with it and to get creative and splash some color on the page and see what happens. It could be a really, really fun moon to just kind of let some prototyping run wild. And that's actually also where the Eight of Pentacles comes in. And this is a card of dedication and determination and playing the long game of learning a skill and a craft over time and mastering it. The subtitle to this card is often known as The Student Becomes the Master. This is about something coming to fruition that you've been working on for a while, that it's coming together, that the pieces are starting to percolate and become something. And I also think this ties into Aquarian energy because Aquarian energy is a fixed sign energy. It's very determined. We have that Saturn influence here with the new moon. And this is about just continuing to show up time and time again. And it's interesting to me because I think one of the crafts and the dedication points in my life, and I know a lot of other people's lives that I know as well, is to show up as ourselves. Weirdly, this takes dedication because it means sometimes being socially awkward. It means sometimes doing things that people won't understand, or they'll have a lot of questions, or they won't quite know how to like put all the pieces together when they look at your life or some of the decisions you've made. It takes bravery not to wear the comfortable mask that everybody will just know what that is. And it's a dedication to just showing up to being ourselves and writing a mythology that is meaningful to us. So both of these cards are about just showing up as ourselves in kindness, in compassion, in curiosity, in play, in service, and seeing what comes back, seeing what shows up. There is a determined energy to this Lunar New Year and to this Aquarius New Moon. But I think, like I said, while that's so true, there's determination, there's focus, there's a sense of energy wanting to be shared, energy wanting to be dreamed up and explored. I think it's also important to just remember to also witness the part of you that maybe is a little scared or a little nervous or a little skeptical, or who has written that mythology that maybe was about feeling like you're broken, you're stuck, you're not allowed to be vibrant or alive. That part of ourselves, this is a really important moon to make sure you're just taking care of that part of yourself, hearing it out, and then also saying, I hear you, I got you, and also, yes, I'm allowed to be vibrant. I'm allowed to be myself. I'm allowed to explore and play and share myself and what I create and make in the world. And it's still okay. So with that, I wish you all a beautiful Lunar New Year, beginning to a whole new year of the lunar cycle. I'm so curious to see what our moon magics will bring for us. I am in the midst of a pretty busy and wild chapter of my life, as I mentioned in my last discussion about my big move. So if you haven't seen that, you can go check that out. I am in the midst of a huge transition in my life, and I'm feeling pretty sensitive and pretty overwhelmed by the amount of stuff I have to get done in the next few weeks, but I also feel the excitement and the warmth of what is coming. And I am just wishing you all such a beautiful Aquarius New Moon, Lunar New Year. I will be doing a big old cozy activation on my Patreon and my beautiful community there. We have a wonderful time connecting, exploring, playing with ideas, and I'd love to see you there. So I'll leave that link below if you are interested. Also, you can find me on Instagram, and there are imposters, and the imposters are going to apparently keep being there forever. So I will leave my handle, and just remember this, they're just the one and only me. I don't direct message people soliciting for readings or money. So I will leave my handle so you know where to find me, and my email, my website, all that good stuff. I will see you all very soon, and have a gorgeous new moon in Aquarius.